Yeah, I want to welcome everybody to the 2025 Energy Update, and welcome to Driftmeyer. This is a big honor for me. It's a continual reminder about one of the strongest partnerships for my school, which is the School of Public and International Affairs, Political Science, International Affairs, Public Administration, Policy. And when I think about, we're 20 different schools and colleges at UGA, but really one of the strongest partnerships that my school has is with engineering. We're super proud of that. We have, and I think you'll be hearing more about this, the Energy Security Studies Partnership. And the essential bridge there is David Gaddy, who sometimes I forget, he's actually not a professor at this. His official line is not in the School of Public and International Affairs. We really think of him that way. He is a professor in the College of Engineering. But it's indicative of this sort of seamlessness between our two schools and the importance of the topic of energy, which just looms larger and larger for us. I don't think there's anybody in the state who knows more about the energy security situation for Georgia now and moving forward than David Gaddy. So it is such an honor to work with David on an everyday basis. So I just wanted to quickly, recognize that we have an audience here with a statewide scope. The same is true for the School of Public and International Affairs. I think Dean Orso will probably mention the same for engineering. This is something that's true for all of our schools and colleges. We're always thinking about how we can serve the entire state. And I just wanted to quickly mention, we have a number of programs in my school that are in this space, but something just for the back of your mind doesn't necessarily have to do with energy per se. On the other hand, when I think about energizing Georgia, there's energy as a natural resource, and then there are people. And for us in the School of Public and International Affairs, we're really sincerely committed to making sure that we have public officials, public administrators, folks like you in elected office for years to come across the entire state. One of the programs that we have is we actually have 2 internships that enable us to ensure that we have students in our school, whether at the undergraduate level or the graduate level, who can have a paid internship. Either we can pay the student directly, or we can pay an employer who then pays the student to work in public-facing organizations, including local government. One of those programs is named after former Speaker David Ralston. It's called the Ralston Small and Rural Communities Internship Program. And it's part of a broader initiative where we're focusing on 118 counties in Georgia that have a population of 50,000 or less. Just really quickly, just to give you a sense of what a student can do in that internship. We have a student just completed an internship. Her name is Olivia Hummel, and she's in our Master's of Public Administration program. She was in Murray County. Probably don't need to tell you where that is, but it's I guess I would say sort of in between. I'm going to say like LJ on the right and Chickamauga on the left. So it's this little county there. You need to sort of think about this. There's one commissioner, and that person is also the county manager. That is a big job. If you're going to intern for that person, you're going to have a lot of responsibility. She did rotations in public works, land use, probate court, and she becomes the principal person this summer in developing something called Engaging Murray, which is enabling that county manager to have a productive relationship with citizens in that county across a whole set of public services. I sort of reflect on that. That's exactly what we want out of a program like that. Because we know our students, when they work in local and county government, they often have an internship that's kind of richer than if they went and they worked for, they're kind of a cog in the wheel at a larger organization. So I personally think Olivia Hummel could probably go back to Murray County and she could run for office. And needless to say, we have a bunch of people running for state office. We got one of our graduates who's running for U.S. House seat, kind of exciting. So anyway, I'm getting a little bit down a rabbit hole, but we are completely dedicated to the statewide mission. And so is our newest dean. That's Dean Alex Orso. I just want to tell you some stuff about him real quick, and then he'll come up. So Alex had been This is a real pride point for us. He had been a professor in the College of Computing at Georgia Institute of Technology. And yeah, exactly. Am I not supposed to say that? Or did I mispronounce it?
Trade school.
Right. So all that stuff, training Scandinavian, red and black, is one red and black side of me. So all that good stuff. But he was, I mean, this is kind of a coup for us because he was director of Georgia Tech's scientific software engineering center. Briefly, Georgia Tech. It's a great institution, and they have great software engineers. Who's the best? Alex is the best. That's kind of cool. Apart from being dean and everything else, which is great because he's an expert in debugging software. And that reminds me, I got a problem with the new version of Chrome.
We'll look at that after the meeting.
Yeah.
The old version of Chrome.
I'd say just trying to unload the thing. So he was also the associate dean for off-campus and special initiatives in the College of Computing at Georgia Tech for about 5 or 6 years. And then he became the interim dean of the College of Computing. Well, we're smart. You know, for fear that he would become provost or president at Georgia Tech, we stole him away to become dean of our College of Engineering before it was too late. So Alex is a fantastic researcher. He just raises everything up a whole level here in engineering and computation. His research focuses, as I said, on software testing, program analysis, and debugging. He has developed techniques for improving software reliability, security, and trustworthiness, and the validation of these techniques in real-world systems. Timely stuff, partnerships with industry, with Google, IBM, Microsoft, tons of research funds. He is a distinguished member of the Association for Computing Machinery and a fellow of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. We're thrilled that Alex is with us. And with that, I'd like to introduce Alex Wilson. Thank you.
Now I can only disappoint after that introduction, but thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you all for being here. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to have a few quick remarks. Since I'm new to most of you, I'm going to give you a little bit of background, and Matt already did a fantastic job, so apologies to Senator Ginn, who already heard some of the story yesterday, so you just, you'll be a duplicate for you. So my name is Alessandro Orso. I go by Alex. As you can tell by my accent, I'm not from here, so I'm from Italy, but I'm almost from here because I moved here in 2000, so I've been here almost half of my life. So I'm almost half Georgian, or I consider myself half Georgian. I got my BS, MS, and PhD in Italy. I came for a postdoc at this engineering university west of Athens, and I was there for 25 years. As Matt said, the culmination, the highest point there was I was interim dean for the College of Computing in 2023, and after I stepped down, I applied for the job here. I was delighted to get it, and I'm super thrilled to be the new dean of engineering at UGA. So it's been fantastic since I started. Admittedly, I started a month ago, so I'm still in the honeymoon phase. But I started working with the college before, and as Matt was saying, I had to get rid of a lot of my wardrobe, so I put everything in the box, a shop for socks, and all that jazz. But that's the easy part of the job. And why am I so thrilled about being here as Dean of Engineering? Well, because the College of Engineering has been on an incredible trajectory, since its creation. And as you're probably aware, just in the last 5 years, just to give you an idea, we increased by 300% the amount of research funding. So it means our researchers got 3 times as much research funding as they were before. We increased by 30% the number of undergraduates that we graduate, and by 60% the number of graduates that we graduated. And these numbers might be impressive, but to me, the thing that was very impressive when I applied for the job is the story behind the numbers. So you don't get to that point unless you have very passionate people. Passionate in the college, we share students, faculty, staff, but also alumni, friends of the college. So one thing I experienced from day one was really this passion for UGA. In fact, yesterday there was a reception for the new deans. It was the reception for the new position, and my wife came and she was telling me every time I was kind of talking about and bragging about, oh my gosh, you should feel, how it feels in the room when you're at UGA. She was like, yeah, sure. And then she came yesterday, and at the end of the reception, she told me, no, I can see it. And it's true, people are really, really excited about UGA. And so why is that important to graduate so many engineers? Well, the reason why it's so important is because Georgia desperately needs engineers. So I spent my last month doing a lot of meetings with alumni companies going around Georgia, and the consistent message that I get is like, we need more engineers. And so there's definitely a need for engineers, and in fact, one of the companies with which we collaborate did an estimate, and I think the number that they came up with was that the demand for Georgia engineering jobs is going to grow by over 5,000 in the next 10 years. So there's going to be a need for a lot of engineers, and we were more than happy to produce those engineers. So I can say that our college fulfills the UGA's mission of serving Georgia. And just to give you some numbers, so over 90% of our undergrads are from Georgia. We have a 97% student placement rate within 6 months of graduating. So that's a very, very high number. The median starting salary is $72,000 for a freshly graduated bachelor's. And very importantly, over 75% of our graduates stay in Georgia, so they don't go to other places. So we really serve Georgia. We get students from Georgia, we graduate students, and the students stay in Georgia. And this is something that is spelled out right in the UGA strategic plan. And I'd like to read this because this is something that really stuck with me, that says that UGA is committed to the people of the state of Georgia to addressing the grand challenges of our time at a national and global scale. So what that means is that doing great local work with local impact, but also with kind of broader impact across the nation and in the world. That really, really resonated with me. And we do not do this only through education, we also do it through service to the state and also through research. So we have great research in the college and also through our collaboration, for example, with SPIA. Just to give you some of the areas in which we do research: smart manufacturing, precision agriculture, precision medicine, resilient infrastructure, cyber physical system, and energy policy, again in collaboration with SPIA, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And this is just to cite a few. And I want to conclude to say a big thank you to all of you, because this will not be possible without your help, without your support. And so I thank you very much on behalf of our college and on behalf of UGA. So that's all I wanted to say. So now, speaking of great research, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. David Gaddy. I know he doesn't need an introduction, I'm going to give him one anyways, but I'll keep it very short. So he's a faculty in our college. He collaborates very actively with SPIA by being a senior fellow in UGA's Benson Birch Center for International Trade and Security. He has been working with the center for 7 years, if I got my numbers correctly, to establish a highly collaborative energy security studies program focused on the technological and policy implication of energy and national security. So without further ado, please help welcome me to the stage, Dr. Gaddy.
So the pace of the conversation is fixing to slow down a whole bunch. But Alex and I do have a lot in common. We're both Italian. My great-granddaddy came over sometime about 1901 or something like that. So
You lost the accent.
I clearly didn't inherit, but I did inherit the romantic Italian stuff. So I figured we've got that in common, I think. Thanks to Matt Auer, Dean Auer, for the introduction. Thanks to Alex. Alex, we're really thrilled that you're here. And we appreciate y'all coming today. Thanks to Blake and others for making this happen. We're always excited about having state legislators here. We try to keep up with what's going on throughout the year. Kind of as a little background, we've been in about 10 states since we were together last August. We've been in about 10 states, and the conversations pretty much revolve around the same things. There's increased demand, there's rate increase, all of these things that I'm sure y'all are hearing at the state capitol. One of the things that we are trying to do is to be a source of information for you, just to provide some just unbiased third-party input to help you make decisions, to help you talk with constituents back home. So I'm gonna start out with just a straight up bottom line out front. It's kind of odd to have a bottom line up front that's two lines, not words. But you'll notice this is from 1900 moving forward. We got two curves. One's total energy, and the other one is electricity. And you can see how that's been, sometime around in the 30s, it started to tick up when we started to electrify rural America. And then, of course, after World War II, it really started to ramp up. But notice how flat it is. It has been, Frank, just keep me on task here. Randy, we're good right here? Just notice for about the past 20 years, it's flat. It's just flat as a flitter. Now, that's not going to hold. Y'all know this. You've heard this. It's all over the country that we're fixing to hit extreme increases in electricity demand. Rates are going up all over the country, not just in Georgia. And that third little bullet right there, thermal capacity is in decline. It's going to be a lot of what we talk about today because we're talking about coal, natural gas, and nuclear. Those are fundamental baseload resources that we're seeing shifting in the country. It's doing some here in Georgia. And then there are geopolitical implications. We've got acute geopolitical competition right now with China. And a lot of that's going to revolve around data centers, which we'll talk about when we get towards the end here. I want you to notice my last little bullet right there. This is all manageable. One of the last slides that we're going to put up here on this is just going to be that it is easily within our reach to manage all of these, what seem to be conflicting forces. Georgia can handle this. I think we're in the best position of any state in the country. I've been in 28 of them, and Georgia's in a good spot to handle this strategically. So what we're going to cover here, we're going to go over some just resources, rates, and CO2. The first few slides here are things that we always provide in an update because it's an update. It's to let you know where we were last year to this year and how things are looking still relative to some other parts of the country. We're going to talk about the value proposition of diversity, both resources and technologies. That's a key part of what we try to talk about here, particularly with the public, is to understand that these resources and technologies have very different characteristics. And then we'll get a little nerdy, talk about the thermal capacity trends in the U.S. I'm going to talk about the U.S. in general, I'm going to talk about Georgia in particular, but I'm also going to select about 3 or 4 states that are doing some unique things, not necessarily good things, but they are facing some unique circumstances in their own states. They are lessons for us in Georgia. And then I'm going to touch on efforts to increase thermal capacity. In particular, President Trump issued an executive order on civilian nuclear power a few weeks back. We're going to talk about that a little bit, mainly to try and manage expectations, to think about nuclear in a pragmatic way. Then we're going to close out talking about everybody's favorite subject right now, and that's data center. We'll do that last. So overview. Again, this is the trend since World War II, since the end of the war, since 1949. You'll see things went up, things went down, things are flat. Back in the late 70s, some of you may remember it, there was an oil embargo. We called it an energy crisis. It was mainly the Middle East closed the taps. I'm pointing out here what we did in 1978 as a country. We passed the Power Plant Industrial Fuel Use Act because we were not able to fuel power plants, new power plant capacity with natural gas. We just couldn't do it anymore because our resources were tapped. We couldn't technologically and economically access natural gas. So we passed congressional legislation in 1978 that prohibited any more oil or gas-fired power plants in the country. Instead, you had to build coal plants. In retrospect, some people may look at that as a major mistake. We did that as a matter of national security. We understood that our energy resources, and in particular, our power sector, pretty much stands up our industrial base. Without that, we don't have what we've got today, and we are not the country that we have been for 150 years. That was reversed, and you can see as we move on forward, hydraulic fracturing kicks in, horizontal drilling, and we were able at that point. Coal kept increasing, but we eventually, in about 2005, you see the line there, Coal starts going down and natural gas starts going up. We have offset, now, a lot of coal capacity in this country. You're going to see when we get to that. There's a little bit of buyer's remorse on some of it. Some folks have, in the states that we've been in, have said that they wish they hadn't done all their coal back as fast as they did. And I understand, I do, that as an academic at a university, generally, when you look at the downward trend in coal, you're supposed to be happy about it. That's a potential, major potential problem as we move forward in this country, that we are moving away from a domestic resource. Talk about that more as we go through it. Notice that nuclear is generally flat. Wind is our #1 renewable in the country, by far. I think right here you'll see in these, what I've got here as far as the generation percentages, wind is at 10.52, it's even outpacing hydro, but certainly outpacing solar. So that's just an overview. Now, this is a key point up here. 37.2% of the U.S. thermal fleet, coal, nuclear, natural gas, is over 40 years old. I use that number because that's when we build a nuclear plant, it's licensed for 40 years. So that's kind of just a benchmark for when things start to age and you're going to have to start looking at replacing capacity. 37.2 of the thermal fleet is over 40 years old. We're going to have several data points on that when we get later. Easy graph. The only things I want you to lock in on this are the rates. They're here in these little whatever figures I've got there. Notice in 2024, the average U.S. rate residential is 16.48 cents a kilowatt hour. Now this is, again, front and center with a lot of constituents in Georgia, a lot of Georgia citizens with regard to rates. It's the same thing throughout the country. These are the census regions, and I'll look at the states in particular in just a minute. But you can see as we move around, just counterclockwise, the rates here, 14.04, still below the average, even more so here in the east, south, central. We're right here below the national average in our region. But just notice as we start moving up in these middle Atlantic and New England states, we're going up to 27 cents a kilowatt hour. That is a lot of money for a kilowatt hour of electricity. In Georgia, the average rate, I think we'll see it in just a little bit, somewhere around 14, a little above 14 cents. You get up in the east, north, central, it's about the U.S. average, and it starts to decline again as we get out to the mountain. But back over here in the Pacific, where California's dominant, 24 cents a kilowatt. Those are expensive rates, residential rates. We'll put more detail in a minute. This is thermal capacity. This is generally states, regions where you can see here, it's just conventional thermal capacity as your top resources. Same here in the South Atlantic. Starts to split up here. Coal is dialing back. Coal is almost gone in New England. It's coming back in the east, north, central. Here the wind picks up. We still have a good bit of conventional. And then once you get back over here to this area, a lot of natural gas, hydro's #2. The only point here in these slides is these regions up here where the rates are really, really high. Those tend to be deregulated markets in those states. Frank?
Professor Gaddy said, is it fair to put anybody in the state of California, like Washington and Oregon? Because they're a totally different animal.
I got it. This is the census region for EIA. So
Yeah. I just wonder why would you put anybody in the state of California?
We can talk, that'd be presentation #2. But that's the census region. We'll look at California separate here just a little bit. These are primarily up here in this region in the upper northeast. And those are deregulated states, deregulated markets. That's a big deal in the power sector space. And California is as well. What this reflects as far as this resource base is not so much where the resources are. It's not like we've got a lot of natural gas, nuclear, and coal down here. It just straight up reflects the region's energy culture. How do we see energy in these particular regions? And they see it very differently, I think, particularly when it's in a deregulated market.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
When you say deregulated, you mean there's no regulation around those systems?
No, so when we say regulated versus deregulated, What we're talking about here is we are going to, like we've done here in Georgia, we have the Territorial Act here in Georgia. Got the Territorial, it goes back in, what is it, 1973? Yeah. Territorial Act. And we have assigned guaranteed regions for utilities to provide retail electricity to customers. Since they are given this guaranteed market, the exchange here is the rates are going to be regulated. So we've got the PSC now, who's going to regulate Georgia Power in this case. Nobody else that just regulate Georgia Power. They're going to regulate both rates, and they're going to oversee any decisions that are made on new power plant capacity and build out the integrated resource plan and so forth. So deregulated, Ronnie, means that what we're going to do is we're just going to let the market figure it out. We're just going to let the market do it, let the market figure it out. And what we're seeing, and we'll see that in a minute when we get to the comparisons of rates for regulated and deregulated, markets don't necessarily do so well in keeping the rates down. Chuck?
Just a quick question about what you got the generation there. Is that what's generated in that state, or what's used?
It's regions.
No, okay, so
Okay.
just follow regions. Is that what's used in that state, or what's generated in that?
Those are the resources that are used to generate electricity in those.
But if somebody in that green area over there is buying electricity from Nevada,
It's not.
That's not accounted for
In
there.
fact, Chuck, to that point, California imports about 25% of their electricity. So
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
this is only generation within the state. It's only generation within the state.
that's what I thought you mentioned that last year. So when
Yeah.
California talks about coal being down, they're really getting a lot from perhaps Nevada.
That and nuclear, probably.
Yeah.
They're also, other things, but, right. Again, the point here, or at least one of the points here, rates are different across the country. They're also going up across the country. Resource use is different across the country, but for the most part, it just simply reflects the energy culture in that region. Okay? Yes?
For the South,
What's your name? I'm sorry.
Calvin, sir.
Okay.
For the South Atlantic region, does that include Vogtle 3 and 4 and the nuclear?
Does it include what?
Vogtle 3 and 4? the
It
reactor?
includes everything in these states here that are blue.
Yes, well,
Everything.
so 3 and 4 went online last year and this year.
And so this is 24, and these are 24 data, so it includes everything Vogtle units 3 and 4 does. Yep, does. All right. These are things that Energy Information Administration has been putting out for some time. The rates in those regions where they are already high, they're going up. They're going to continue to go up. And again, those regions are deregulated markets. I want to show you just a few graphs on that. So let's look just again, we're going to parse out here the regulated markets and the deregulated markets. The red dotted line is the U.S. average through here. Georgia is the black dotted line. This is for every residential customer in the state. This is not a Georgia Power, EMC, MEAG, Dalton. This is all residential rates in Georgia or in each state. Two things to note. In the regulated markets, the rates generally are lower than the national average. They're also tight. There's not a lot of volatility, except for Vermont, which is just a different state. It's just a different kind of state. Someone used the same graph, same y-axis, and we go to the deregulated market. And here was the promise. The promise in the deregulated market was we're going to go from regulation and just let markets figure it out. And this is what markets figured out. They actually did exactly what you would expect. They're volatile, they're scattered, and they're also expensive. They just simply have not done what they said they were going to do. They haven't. There's a lot of, again, some states that I've been in, there's remorse for having done it, but trying to put that toothpaste back in the tube is going to be very tough. This is one of the advantages, probably one of the core advantages that we've got here in Georgia, and that's one of the last slides that I'll show you here. It should make sense that if we have regulators regulating the rate, that the rate's going to be tight and predictable and not a lot of scatter. What these markets allow is what markets always allow. scarcity and shortages. And when you have those in the electricity market, you're going to have a lot of volatility. Scarcity and shortages are not what we want with electricity, obviously, but that's what we get. If we look at the top 12 highest average residential rates in 2024, they are all, the top 12 are deregulated states except Vermont. They're just an outlier. They're still high. California, Frank, your point's 31.86 cents a kilowatt on average. That's expensive. If we look at where Georgia ranks in the country, this is 2024 rates. This is ranked from highest to lowest. This is the U.S. average here, 16.48, which I just showed you. We are out here 14.14 cents, essentially 18th lowest in the country. 18th lowest. Now, by population, what this means is about 75% of the country lives in a state where the average residential rate is higher than in Georgia. Doesn't mean every person in there does, but on average, those rates are higher. 75% of the country. Again, this is what regulation brings to things like rates. It brings stability, and it has returned lower rates. If we compare Georgia to our competitors, the top 8 GDPs in the country, you see them there, Florida, right on down the line. The only 2 regulated states, Florida, Georgia, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio, Texas, California. The only 2 regulated states are Florida and Georgia. The others are deregulated. And you can see where we are. Again, Georgia, red dotted line. U.S. is a black dotted line. We're below the top 8 GDPs on average residential rate. Again, this says something about Georgia's doing something right when it comes to electricity rates. Given that I understand rates are going up, it's not that they're not going up. They're going up everywhere. If we look at the past 5 years and the past 10 years with those top 8 states, Georgia has, for the past 5 years, the lowest percent change over the past 5 years. We've got a 17.6% increase, whereas when you get down to California, it has almost doubled. For the past 10 years, we are second lowest. I think Florida's got us about 0.3%, but again, about 22.5% increase over the past 10 years. Again, this is just generally steady return on energy policy in Georgia. And the last thing on here on CO2 is our state's electric power sector right now is still at about 77 levels. We continue to tack into that. You can see it's flattened out here. What that amounts to is Georgia's power sector is 34.3% of our total state CO2, 2.8% of the U.S. power sector CO2, 0.9% of the total U.S. CO2, and 0.1%, that is a percentage, 0.1% of total global CO2. We don't get a lot of credit for that, but most of that has been a coal plant offset with natural gas. In fact, I pretty much say that's most of it, and we have brought on.
Remind us, Dr. Gray, and how much more electricity are we generating over that 90 to how many times more kilowatt hours?
How many? For right now, it's flat. It's been a little bit flat. It's fixing to tick up as far as how much electricity we've consumed in the state.
How much we're generating, and we're staying at this level, so we're generating a lot more electricity than we were in 1977.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to get.
No, I thought you meant just like over the past couple of years. No, it's on. Yeah, gosh, yeah, it's
multiple times.
Yeah, I don't have that number, but yeah, wow. And if you want to do that on a per GDP basis, this just normalizes it for all those top 8 states. This is CO2 per GDP activity. Again, Georgia, red dotted line, the U.S. is the black dotted line. This is for the U.S. average. We are below everybody except, and I think that's Illinois. They've got more nuclear than anybody else. And more, and we're a little above, and we are above New York and California. We have simply done a good job managing this strategically, long-term, without essentially doing what New York and California have done, arranged their power sector around CO2 emissions, which is why they have rates that are up here at 31 and 24 cents a kilowatt hour. And they're increasing. You see there parenthetically, California's gone up almost 3 cents just from last year. California went up a little over 2. They're done. They can't squeeze any more carbon out of their economy. They're just, it is asymptotic right there. There's no more they can do unless they just quit generating GDP. We've still got some runway here. This part here, I really would like to just emphasize what we're about to go through here when we're going to talk about this value of diversity. Resources and technology. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a series of slides. They are all similar. They look the same, different colors, different technologies. But let me just explain what this means, because it is, I think, a very important point to convey to Georgia citizens as to why we have the resource base that we have, why we need multiple and diverse resources. What we've got here is from January to December. This is for 2024. This is capacity. It's in megawatts. So the example here being in January, residential solar, this is less than 1 megawatts. The U.S. had about 32,500 megawatts of residential solar. And you can see it increases through the year because we're adding more residential solar capacity. For this month, for that 32,500 or 33,000, residential solar in the U.S. was generating electricity 13.4% of the time. Meaning what? 86.6% of the time, it's not. Now that's just a fact of nature. It's not like a complaint. It's just a way of things. So down here is generating both electricity and revenue. The gray is its strength. The capacity factor, the weighted capacity factor for the entire year, residential solar, 19.7%. So what? 80.3% of the time, residential solar is not generating electricity. 19.7% of the time it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through 6 technologies and resources and just see how these capacity factors measure up. So we're going to scale it up to utility scale. That's what we got a lot of in Georgia. We got a lot of utility scale solar. You can see the capacity factor we gained about what? About 4% there by going up to utility scale. Still at peaks in the summer, which is what you would expect. Bump it up and move over to wind. This is why wind is the #1 renewable in the country. It's got a much better capacity factor. Problem is, we ain't got none in Georgia. Geography picks winners on renewables, and it didn't pick us when it came to wind. A little more consistent across the year. It's flatter or lower here in the summer, which is in contrast with solar. 34% capacity factor is pretty good for a renewable. It's a good bit higher than it is, of course, for utility scale solar. Is our coal fleet. Notice that it has not changed. In fact, we go back here to wind, it's increased a little bit. We go back up to utility scale solar, it's certainly ramping up throughout the year, lots more being added. I showed you that graph earlier about coal generation just going down, 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 down. But here's what we're not doing. We're not really retiring the plants at that pace. Utilities and states have understood all along that they're probably going to need those coal plants at some point. So they're keeping them spinning over there, just in reserve, so that they can call on them. And a lot of states have had to do that when weather got to be extreme. 42.6% capacity factor, that used to be up in the 60s and 70s. That was one of our hosses when it came to the power fleet. This is natural gas. This has been the lifesaver for the country. When you saw the coal go down and the gas go up, we were shifting over to combined cycle power plants and combustion turbines. Capacity factor, you see it's almost 60. This will continue to climb for the next 10 or 15 years. We look at combustion turbines, all of a sudden it plummets. And the reason that we got this slide up here is capacity factor does not always, even though great capacity factor, this one's lower down, always doesn't necessarily convey what its value is to the grid. I'll have a curve up here in just a minute that'll get in a little more detail.
Maybe,
Frank,
if you go back to the coal, the reason they're not running the coal plants is because of the air emissions, and I see where your combustion turbines and your coal, I mean, they're ready to run, but it's just, you can't turn it on and off, the coal too quick.
Well, you know, coal can run, but it can't load fall. It's not what it is.
Right.
This is
CTs,
like this.
yeah, CTs can do that.
So once you get up to that, and we'll see in a minute, once you get up to that peak, you gotta have something that'll throttle. But the point here with the CT, with the combustion turbine, you don't use them often, but you use them at the most critical time of the day. You use them when the peak is peaking. That's redundant. But it's kind of like bringing in your closer in a baseball game. They come into the ninth inning and they just shut things down. They get you through the ninth inning and you go home with a win. So the capacity factor here does not convey really all of the value of that technology. But without these combustion turbines, we struggle during peaks. We struggle also when a solar resource comes offline or when the sun's not shining. Something has to respond, and gas doesn't. Gas just responds. Coal doesn't, nuclear certainly doesn't, but gas does. And then we get to nuclear. Capacity hasn't changed much. We, of course, with both, we have hardly show up at it, not on this one because it was already running. 92.3% capacity factor, you just crank them up and go. Now here's what I want to try to drive home. If we look at the utility scale solar and the nuclear, they're about the same capacity around 100,000. This starts out a little below 100,000. This goes up above 100,000 for the year. Nuclear, a little below 100,000. Same capacity for the most part across the country. Same 100,000 megawatts of capacity. But look at the generation difference. This one down here, 218 plus million megawatt hours, almost 782 million megawatt hours. That's 3.6 times more. The point there being capacity does not carry the day on what the value of these resources are. This is what capacity factor tells us, is just how much these resources and technologies are delivering to the grid and to the system. Same capacity, completely different generation. Probably, in my opinion, going around the country talking about this is probably the most problematic issue that we face. And it is the value of electricity. How much does it cost? Generally, the phrase that we use, or that y'all use, or some of you use in the industry, is called LCOE, it's levelized cost of electricity. And here's the equation. It's not hard. It's simple. It's so easy that somebody from Jones County can figure this out. I'm from Jones County, by the way. All we're going to do is we're going to take the annual cost, capital cost, add operation and maintenance, add the fuel, and then a return on investment. That's your annual cost for that one technology. And we're going to divide it through by generation, which we just ran those calculations for some of those others. And that's going to give us $1 per kilowatt hour. So we got these resources, we got these technologies, the ones that we just ran through, and they're going to generate, with that equation, a levelized cost of electricity. And this is what's reported. This is what you read in the newspaper. Over and over. Levelized cost is blank. And it generally is cheaper up here. It's a little more expensive as you get down here. Some are just more expensive and some are cheaper. But keep in mind, cheap oftentimes is exactly the kind of performance that you make with. So we're going to push this down just what? The economic value proposition of those resources and technologies. What's coming out of here is LCOE, but we have hundreds of thousands of utility folks in the state of Georgia that are adding value to that electricity that's generated. Lights go out, power goes out, they're out there doing what they do, and by the time it gets here, we've got a retail rate in Georgia of 14.14 cents. So even though we start out here at 4 cents kilowatt hour, levelized cost, that's really the levelized cost of generation. It's not the retail rate out here. It's not the same thing. That is an economic value proposition. And we definitely want to try and build as much low-cost capacity as we can. But keep it in mind, we got capacity factor constraints back there. This daily demand curve, and you've got a thermal capacity with a big, whatever color that is down here. This is just an example. It's actually data from California because they got a lot of solar. So I keep them with a lot of solar. But as you look at this demand curve, this is for 24 hours. It makes sense. Some people are going to bed, and some people like me are getting up about 3 o'clock in the morning, and you start moving up this demand curve. And things that we've talked about. Here are peaker plants. They're having to respond. But what we have is we've got different characteristics to ensure that we meet that demand 24/7. We've got our base load resources, thermal capacity. We've got intermediate and base load. That right now is mostly natural gas combined cycle. And then the solar comes in the middle of the day. You know what the solar is good for? It's going to put some downward pressure on using something like natural gas combined cycle. But what it's not going to do is load follow right there, because it may or may not be there. That gas right here, you can see, is what's doing the response. It's doing the work up here. Natural gas is carrying a lot of water for our national grid. It is doing a lot of work, both base load, intermediate, and up here following demand, peak loads. So all of a sudden, that levelized cost of electricity that we had back here does not account for the reliability value proposition. This is the only value proposition at the end of the day that really matters, is are you able to keep the grid running? Reliability is always the priority. None of these characteristics, base load, load following, peakers, none of that is accounted for, capacity factor, none of it's accounted for in that levelized cost of electricity. The one you read about in the newspaper, or the one whatever comes across your desk, it's only back here at the generation. It is not accounting for the real value, and that's the reliability value. That's hard to convey. In the states that I've been in, it is hard to convey that to the general public because they've read that solar's cheaper, wind is cheaper, blank is cheaper, whatever it is, it's cheaper. Well, it may be cheap, but it may not map into what is needed here in its diversity. You need every one of those resources like we've always needed them for the past 100 years. So now, the nerd part of the presentation. If that wasn't nerdy, this will get nerdy. This is every week. All across, so this is the North American Electric Reliability Corporation report last December and just this summer. And this has been building for years. And I've got highlighted, well, I don't highlight, I got boxed out in red. The resource mix is becoming increasingly variable and weather dependent. That's not a complaint. It's not besmirching renewables. It is just saying they're weather dependent. The resources also have different physical and operating characteristics from the generators they are replacing. Come up with thermal. They talk about it over here for the summer. The performance of those replacement resources is more variable. Surge in demand growth continues. Thermal generators are announcing plans for retirement. This is going on all over the country. And you'll see some of the numbers that we'll have up here in just a second as we look at like the U.S. So I'm going to go through a series of slides, about 4 or 5 of different. This is the U.S. We'll hit Georgia, Florida, New York, and Texas for different reasons. The key things here are how old are they? Because it really, you can, when you look at an automobile, you can look at how many miles are on the car. But the question is, how many cars have you got and how old are they? Because at some point you're going to have to do some replacement. Lock in here on those that are over 40 years old. And then back here in the younger group, look at how much thermal fleet is being built relative to how much renewables are being built. Those two things are the ones that I want to pay attention to or focus on as we move through this. 37.2% U.S. thermal fleet is over 40 years. That's getting old. What we've done for the past 20 years, what we've built thermal fleet-wise and solar and wind-wise are about the same. And keep in mind the comparison that I just made with solar and nuclear. We can do the same thing with solar and coal or solar and gas. we are not necessarily replacing generation just because we matched the capacity. Right now, the U.S. total fleet is about 1.2 million megawatts. 1.2 million megawatts. Almost 200,000 of that over 40 years old. 300,000 is less than 20. Actually, before I get to that, I'm going to talk about the three thermal capacities that we've got. So here's our coal fleet. 76% is over 40 years old. Our coal plants are long in the tooth, very old. What, 50 years maybe? 50 to 60 years, I think, max when you squeeze out of a coal plant. Maybe, what you think, Ron, 50 years? That's about it. This has got to be replaced. I mean, we got to put something in here because demand's going up. If we look at our nuclear fleet, 65% of it is 40 years old, meaning it's past its first license and into the second. 65% 40 years old. Now, we can get 20 to 40 more years out of that, but still, it's got to be relicensed. You see our nuclear fleet here in Georgia. Here's Hatch, back in 75 and 79. Vogtle, right here. You see where they are. They're on the young side of things. But our nuclear fleet's aging. And again, think about how long it takes to build a nuclear reactor if we're going to replace it with nuclear. And if we look at our natural gas fleet, these are the children on the block right here. Only 18.5% is 40 years old. We're packing it. We're building gas plants. We don't really have much of an option. So if we look at Georgia, we're in good shape. 28.4% of the fleet's over 40. That's lower than the national average. And we're pretty much we're building more thermal than we are solar. That is, we're bringing in the reliable stuff while also just calculatedly bringing in the solar. We've got about 37,000 plus megawatts of capacity. You can see 700 of it is over 40. If we look at Florida, Florida matters. Why? Look at what Florida's young. They don't have aging fleets, but they have really tapped in to the wind when it comes to their thermal fleet, and it is predominantly, you can see here, these are all gas technologies. They are building gas plants. Their natural gas dependency, 70% of their fleet is natural gas, and right at 80% of generation is natural gas. I've been down there enough times. I know the state, and they are worried about that overdependency there. And so now, for the past 2 years, all they talk about is nuclear. It's all about nuclear. If we look at New York, their fleet is just about dead. I mean, over half of it is 40 years or older. They're backfilling, trying to build new thermal. They're about 40,000 total. But here's an ironic little point. In 2020 and 2021, they retired 2 nuclear reactors because they had a focus on moving towards 100% renewables. Just 2 weeks ago, out of the governor's office, they were looking for a nuclear czar to reboot the nuclear industry. These are buyer's remorse things or sellers, whichever way that works. It's, oh gosh, I wish I hadn't done it thing. You're not going to just re-up your nuclear industry that fast. It doesn't work that way. If we look at Texas, 30% is thermal. This is very problematic over here. And you'll see the testimony in just a minute. They have backfilled for the past 20 years with almost 38% of what they build has been solar and wind. That's subsidy driven. And they got a lot of resources out there too. There's a bunch of solar and wind in Texas. They're about 168,000. Oh, way out of kilter. Now, here's the testimony. And I say, every time I pull this slide up, the next thing out of my mouth is, if you don't take anything away from this presentation, but go and listen to these 2 podcasts, that would be what I'd recommend you do. This is Peter Lake. He came in on the backside of Winter Storm Uri in Texas. This is Pablo Vegas. He came in also. And notice, back here, when we were all watching Texas to see, I had heard that it was a couple of hours away from a black start which if you're in the power sector world, last thing you want to hear. For an entire state, second largest economy in the country, to have a black start means they have nothing. They have no station power, they have no grid. The entire state is black. That's the second largest economy in the country. He said they were 4 minutes and 37 seconds away from a black star. It would have taken weeks for them to get that back up. Again, here's one of the reasons when Pablo came in, he said reserves that were developed over 30 years ago, dispatchable, reliable power, we have for the last 10 years, stopped building those and built on us. I used different years. I gave them a little more leeway. When he came in, he noticed right off the bat they have been chasing the cheapest resource and technology, and it is the least reliable. Not that they shouldn't have incorporated it, but these are two guys that know what they're doing, and they said, boy, it was a big mistake. Up in the Northeast, which was part of that map I showed you earlier, same thing. Deregulated markets, retired power plants, they're spending tens of billions of dollars now, after the fact, to build capacity that they have neglected because they have let the market dictate their energy policy. And the market does not see reliability. It's looking at things like levelized cost, which don't sense, is it available? Is the technology working? Is it load following? So they got very tight supply and demands, meaning not much margin there. So an interim point here, deregulated markets are doing after the fact, in reaction, response to things that we do ahead of time. We're not going to get in this because we've got a regulated market that allows us to look long term. Merchant markets don't do that. Deregulated markets don't do that. That is a benefit not just in the state of Georgia, but in other states that are regulated, they leverage that to their advantage. So here's what we were trying to do, we being the U.S., not David, but Trump in particular. I know he's got things about we're going to do stuff with coal, I get that. Well, I'm not optimistic, but this is one of the ones that I think is probably the key to us moving forward. A little bit busy, but what this executive order does, and remember, it's got no teeth. It could be gone in 3.5 years. Somebody could come in and reverse the whole thing. But it is looking at the full nuclear fuel cycle, front end, back end, enrichment, construction, plant construction, reactor technologies. It's really just trying to reinvigorate the entire supply chain, which is going to take time. This is not something that's going to happen even within Trump's administration. It is going to take time. If we look at where we are in the U.S., Illinois is number 1. We are number 4 as far as nuclear capacity. Vogtle put us there. In fact, Vogtle now is, the largest nuclear plant in the country. I showed you this earlier. 65% of our fleet is 40 years old or older. If we look globally, because this was part of the motivation for Trump doing what he did, right now we're the leader. We have 400, we've got close to 98, 99 megawatts or gigawatts of nuclear capacity. But we are losing our edge here. From 60 to 99, the U.S. led the world in nuclear construction. We dominated this space. We're down here. We're down, 2 of those are us. This is a national security issue right here. So here's everywhere. Okay, what about SMRs? I hear it, I hear it, I hear it. And the takeaway for me is a lot of folks think those things are sitting over there waiting for us to pick them up and deploy them. We got small modular reactors. All that means is they're less than 300 megawatts. They're still like the ones we got over at Vogtle. Light water, thermal reactors. They're just smaller. Then we got advanced ones. We got this one going up out in Wyoming. Extremely advanced. Different fuel. It's a molten salt, sodium cooled, fast reactor. All that nerdy stuff that you don't want to hear about. But it is every possible advanced phase of nuclear that we've got. Not ready. Not ready. They're just not ready. In fact, if we look at SMRs globally, this is what's under development globally. Here's, next slide, this is what's been deployed. Russia and China. This is part of this is to just manage expectations. We need small modular reactors and we need to be pushing this. But it's not going to happen just in one administration. Advanced reactors, I won't dwell on this, but again, there's a little bit of a difference between small modular and advanced. Advanced just means completely different from the ones that we've got currently like waters. And of the advanced, there are 123 of them out there in the design or development stage. None have been deployed. So essentially, we had a nuclear summit back in April, and this one guy stood up and said the U.S. has got a lot of paper reactors, and that's essentially what we got. Things written down. They're not ready for deployment. So here's the off-ramp. All of the thermal capacity we talked about rates. The next thing is we got demand. It's fixing to kick in. It's already kicking in. This is the technology of the future. And all I'm saying on this graph is we can't just dismiss it. This is a national security asset. It's going to be a national security asset with or without Georgia, with or without the U.S. But whoever reaches the top of the commanding heights here first wins something big. The folks that I have talked with, for the most part, that come out of the military space and the security space, that's what this side of the room helps me with so much, is they will tell you that this is going to be, and in fact, I think, Ani, it was you, I think Ani that told me this one day, it's called the decision edge. Collect data, process the data, and make a decision. Who does that? Quickest. Wins whatever that is, that will competition. Military terms, that's a big deal. So, I offered this last year. I'll offer the same 3 books, but these are the kinds of things that security experts are saying. It's going to determine the power and prosperity of nations. Countries stand to gain a competitive edge if they can adopt it at scale across the economy. That means it's diffused throughout society, not just for the military, not just for the federal government, but we all become users of AI. Profound implications for the U.S., its position in the world order. Those are big key, those are big words. Now, the industrial base, I brought this up before, the data centers now are dead center there. We've talked about in past presentations that industrial base right there is why our country is who it is, why we're strong, why we're the most dominant global superpower in the world, that industrial base. And it's got all kinds of energy up there. High heating value, intense energy resources, all of that thermal capacity and thermal resources that I mentioned earlier. And what we're going to do with AI, not we, because I'm not going to do anything, but what smart people are going to do with it is all of that legacy of industrial baseness in the U.S., 250 years of accrued national power and competitive advantage that got us where we are today. That's all going to route into data, artificial intelligence, and feedback into enhancing the performance of our industrial base. Both our grid, our defense industrial base, and everything else around here. Whoever dominates this will have an industrial-based competitive advantage in the 21st century. And they're going to do it too. I mean, that's just our competitive. This is probably one of those completely bipartisan issues. You want me to talk about China, AI, everybody will agree and say, yep, we got to win this. We may not know why. We may not know all of the ramifications of AI, but it's probably not worth finding out on the losing end. So if we now look at powering this demand, we've got our 40 years and older nuclear capacity. China's not like China, plenty of nuclear capacity. They're building reactors every year, putting them up in construction, bringing them online. They're leading the world in this. If we look at their coal plants, We just about don't have any. That's all they're doing. Coal plants, bigger plants. Coal plants, bigger plants. In fact, in the past 5 years, they've built as much coal capacity as we have in current operation. And 76% of our coal fleet's over 3 years. This is like an old man and a young man. Old man, well, he about dead. Young man, right. Yes, sir. What's your name?
Carter.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So Microsoft, 3 Mile Island, reactor 1, and they're going to buy all the power from that single reactor just for Microsoft 20.
Right.
And someone, I heard them, I thought it was hyperbole, said that would generate power for 700 or 800,000 houses. Is that crazy, or is that really?
No, it's a pretty good sized reactor they got up there. We can, I think, a couple of 300,000 people, that sounds a little high, 700,000. I would have thought more like 250,
Right, so
300,000.
Microsoft breaks its own needs versus all that. What does a nuclear submarine do? I mean, as someone going
Powers the world's greatest navy.
It's down there for 60 years. And
No, so the nuclear subs are much more highly enriched than what we have. These are 3 to 5%. Nobody will tell me this because it's none of my business, but I think they're above 80% enriched, I think. So those things are going to sit there for, and they're going to run until they are going to outlive the asset that they're powering. They're going to outlive it. This is not, can we do it? Can we build nuclear? That's not the problem. The problem is we don't have a supply chain right now to stand it up, get down the cost curve, and up learning. We've got to get past, and what we've done for so many years is kind of cheerlead nuclear and say, everybody go out and build design serial number 001, and we all feel good and think we're doing something. We need to build 15 of the same one, get past the non-recurring R&D to the economy of scale, and just sit there and crank those things out. And we have never done it. And that's going to take strategy and political will to do it. But what we're going to have to do is have a competition and maybe pick 2 reactors and say, y'all win it. You build 15, and if you don't, we're going to lock you all up and find you $1 zillion or something. So there's got to be some incentive to get out to serial number 15. No utility is going to raise their hand for one of these advanced reactors. I mean, they're doing that in Wyoming because Bill Gates is behind it. But if David Gates is behind it, they're not going to do it because he ain't got the money. So Carter, yeah, your point's well taken. Rare circumstances up there, though. Right. We don't have very many 3 Mile Islands that we've shut down and we can still bring back up. We're trying to do that in several other states. A lot of that is just to get the grid stood back up. China's not deliberating over its power. They're not sitting over there in the Chinese Communist Party headquarters saying, how are we going to do this and keep carbon down? They don't care. They're not worried about anything, and they will not allow anything to deter them from winning this competition. And to win this competition is going to require a lot of power. And we cannot contain it. This is stuff you know. Somebody's going to win.
So,
Yep. Chuck?
I mean, so I got to ask again.
Which slide?
Sorry?
Which slide?
Well, no, I mean, it'll go to this, but, so when you guys come to the Public Service Commission down there and they tell you they want you to build X units of solar, megawatts, you guys, you're putting this, I know you're not in the power business, other people in the power business, but when the power business comes in there and they tell you to do that, I mean, I know it's a regulated thing, but I got to look at that and looking at your curve going, that's just actually adding stranded cost to my bill.
I mean, you can put downward pressure on rates during the middle of the day. You can do it. If you've got plenty of solar there.
But if you're a regulated utility where you're earning a return on what you're expending, you're earning a return on that 100% of the time, not the 20% of the time it's working. And you still, if we're really building baseload, every time you build 100 megawatts of that, you got to build 20 megawatts of baseload underneath it to make it work.
I agree.
So I'm just trying to figure out if that is actually the best way to deliver, the most efficient way to deliver power to this this animal that is going to eat all that.
You mean by way of renewables?
Yes, I mean, it just,
Renewables aren't gonna meet this challenge.
that's why, yeah, that's why, but we require you to put those into the mix to feel good.
And they've probably got different reasons for that, so I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt that they're making decisions on solar in a different lane than I'm talking about. We gotta have thermal capacity
Right.
to do this. It's gotta be muscle energy.
That makes the economy go, this makes you feel good.
Well, again, that's out of my lane, and I like the commission. I think they try hard, and it is a complex job they got. And if I walked in over there and tried to do it, I'd probably have my liver eaten handed to me. Whatever reason to do the job, to me, is a different lane than what we're facing right now.
David,
Yes, sir.
before you get to your,
Oh, yeah, right here.
before you get into that, David.
Oh, yeah, I didn't mean to go past that, that's right.
Yeah, before you get into that, can I just, I love it, said they, you know.
Do I need to get a pulpit?
One of the things that, most of y'all don't know that me and David were actually classmates. Yeah, I call him professor, but we were classmates in Georgia. Said they, and my career had been in the utility business, but I grew up quite like Georgia Power. Said they, been in the electric world, was in here for Jack CMC. The scenario is, I want all my legislative friends to hear me, please. There's a piece of legislation that I've been working on for about a year. Said they, and every one of these data centers, in my day job, I'm an engineer with Thomas and Hutton. We do a lot of work in the data center world. Said they, pretty much all the data centers that are coming into Georgia today are putting 100% standby power on site. They're putting in massive diesel generators, 2 to 3 megawatts apiece, just numbers of them, so that they can carry that load if there's an outage. Georgia Power, MEAG, the EMCs, somebody drops the ball, hey, they want to be up and running. To me, that's the biggest opportunity. Our job as legislators is to set policy, not to set rates, not to do things, but do something that works. We don't want to see grandma, like they did in Texas, being in the dark. That outage that they had in Texas was huge. For me, what I'm trying to do is with the legislation that I'm going to introduce next year, I want to take the investment the data centers are making in their standby generation and make that available for our grid reliability. If you think about it, said, what's the easiest thing that we could do if we have a really high peak and we're caught with our pants down? We're caught where we don't have that power to meet that demand. You look for your friends. And that data center power, their diesel generators, the combustion turbines they have out there, they're ready to run. The reason that they can't is because of an air emissions and what's going on with that. So Jeff Calvin, another one of my classmates, said who's the director at EPD, been working with him and Jim Bowen and some of the guys at EPD to see what we can do to change the rules so that in an emergency, when a utility that's providing service to a data center says, hey, we're about to go dark, they can call on that data center to bring up those generators and shift that power that they were serving the data center away from the data center and serve grandma or whoever it is that's with light and power. And to me, I hope that you'll address this one a little bit, but you know, I know the PSC, they're regulating Georgia Power. MEAG has a great, every city official that's a MEAG city, they're setting those rates. The board of directors for the EMCs, I look at my EMC friends, they set their rates. That's not something that we should do as legislators, but we need to put some things in place to give the PSC, MEAG, and the EMC some tools to make sure that we're 100% reliable in Georgia in the worst of times. And that's where, for me, I shared a draft of the legislation with David yesterday. I shared it with some of my electric friends, said they have been talking about it for about a year with a lot of you. But to me, my colleagues in the legislature, I want you to think about how important it is that we don't get egg on our face by being the state that goes dark. California and Texas have already done that, and you know, we don't want to be next.
You yield back?
Yeah.
I don't get to say that.
You got it.
Yeah. So, Senator Burns, I noticed you wanted me to keep this up here, so I'll make just quick comments. One of the things, again, it is an understandable, justified concern that as we bring in new capacity like this, it's not necessarily going to benefit all the retail customers in the state of Georgia. You know, essentially what the PSC did, I think earlier this year, January, February, indicates that the regulated market is working. 5 minutes, Jim, good. I got it. Because what they did was they got feedback on this and they set up guardrails so that this new capacity that comes in cannot put upward pressure on rates for existing customers, and that the data center is going to have to come in and essentially pay for their own cost. So, good on the PSC for doing it, but again, this is because of our market structure. The deregulated markets are having to respond very differently to this. They have the same problems, but they're responding differently. So Senator Burns.
Speak to the issue of as data centers.
Yes,
Certainly you see Georgia is an attractive state, partially at least because of the rate structure, the cost of energy here. What should the state's position be on incentivizing data centers or facilitating, as Frank suggests, data centers participating in some form of support during peak challenge?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to respond with, I have just started engaging on this with local communities. I was up in Rome a couple of weeks ago. I'll be in Carroll County in a few weeks. So I'm getting information on it, Senator. I don't really have an answer, and truth be told, I don't think very many people do right now, other than we need to be strategic about what we're doing. We need to be thoughtful. And local officials, mayors, city councilmen, commissioners are the ones we need to be talking with to keep them engaged on this. They're going to be the ones that make the decision. So I'm not dodging. I'm just not fully informed on a lot of this right now, but I am trying to inform myself to find out more about it.
If I can help you, last night,
we got 2 minutes.
Okay, Pat Wilson says we need to take the incentive away in an organized manner. Right now we give them the sales tax credit. We said I didn't like it when we want to jerk the carpet out from under them, but we do need them to remove that incentive. Being lower cost power, more reliability, we're all good in Georgia. Keep them coming into Georgia. They pay a lot of local taxes. They provide a lot of investment. They pay a lot of state taxes and sales tax on the energy they use.
Senator Burns, a fair answer that I gave you. I mean, the answer was not, here's what to do. It is, we need to be thoughtful and I need to learn more about it, just like everybody else does. I'm going to summarize it. So here, rates are up, demand is up. So here we got coal plants we're not building anymore. We're retiring, we're not building any more coal facilities. Again, this is a thermal capacity issue. Our nuclear fleet is old and we are struggling to get that back reinvigorated. And demand for power. Is there any surprise here that the cost for a gas turbine now is extremely high? There is no competition any longer. Gas turbine folks understand this. They're not competing with coal plants. They're not competing with the nuclear folks. They just got pretty much a clear field because they know the demand is going up and we got to have it. It should not surprise us that with limited options, demand being up and the supply being short, that we got backlogs. These are things that we've got to work through because it's the first time we've been at this edge of the wave like this. So, closing it out, this is kind of where we started. We are out here in this space, and we are going to need nuclear, and we need to maintain coal. It's not the kind of thing you want to hear maybe on campus, but we are going to need to keep as much coal capacity as we can. It's our market structure for the most part. We've got a legacy. I can say these things over and over, but again, these are things you already know. I'll contend to the cows come home that market structure is our anchor. It's our foundation. It's what's going to allow us to navigate this space strategically instead of what we see going on up in the Northeast, out in Texas, and out in Frank's favorite state of California. Last slide. That's it. You remember Gene Kranz, when Apollo 13 was about to do what it's going to do, everybody's about to panic, and he just looked at it and said, let's all keep cool, let's work the problem, and not make it any worse by guessing. We do that in Georgia, and that's what we just need to continue to do. I would say you got any questions, but we've already done that. I think we're about short on 10 minutes. Please know that, and I want y'all to look on this side of the room. These are students, or at least it used to be. I don't know where they are. These are students that are engaged in our Energy Security Studies program. Camilla video is, where Camilla is right here. This is the hire of hires when we got Camilla to come in. She came in and didn't know what thermal capacity is, and now she is a regulated market embracer, and she likes nuclear power. So we like Camilla. We're not going to let her go back to Missouri. She recently became an American citizen. But she can't drive. Please know that we want to help the state legislature. We ain't got a dog in the hunt other than we are Georgia citizens. So please let us help y'all. We can learn together. We can learn from y'all. I know that. So if you ever need anything from my group here at the university, don't hesitate to call. We're glad y'all came here. Enjoy your lunch. I'm going over there. We all going to eat, right, Blake? Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank y'all for coming. Appreciate it.